Russ Davis.
Russ, nice to meet you.
Very nice to meet you as well.
All right, Stephen Smith.
Hey, Steve. Russ Davis. How are you?
You can sit wherever you want. Probably let you sit in the middle chair up there in the front and run the meeting.
Oh, that's all right.
So do we just have 6 members of the board this?
What did you say?
We only have 6 members of the board now?
Yes.
Okay.
There's been a,
About to.
next time there's a publish, I think it goes out later this month or next month, there'll be there'll be an opening published by the city clerk's office and we'll advertise it.
Oh, okay.
Mike Russell resigned.
That's right.
There was a little bit of confusion there because he resigned right at the point in time when the new positions were being advertised then, and there was some confusion as to whether he presented the proper documentation to the city clerk's office.
Okay.
Although there were some emails that went back and forth, but eventually what it came down to was we only advertised for 2 positions when there were actually 3. So his resignation was actually official. They'll have to advertise for that. But so that's why we're at 6 members instead of 7.
All right. Well, since it's 5:31, I'll go ahead and call the July 21st meeting of the Telecommunications Board to order. Call the roll. Mr. Davis.
I'm here.
Mr. Eric. I'm here. Mr. Shepard is absent at the moment. Mr. Smith.
Present.
Mr. Spencer.
Present.
Okay. Next order of business is approval of the May meeting minutes since we missed the last one. Are there any changes, additions, deletions, motions?
Read over it earlier. I don't believe so.
Make a motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second that.
All those in favor of approving the May meeting minutes say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Next order of business is adoption of the July 21st, 2011 meeting agenda.
Point of information, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Smith?
9 on this agenda says the floor open for comments from attendees. It seems to me that comments from the public or attendees might be more appropriate on each action item that we have rather than sticking with the end. I mean, that's what the quorum court does, and it's just essentially useless to the board. Is there any reason that's there?
I know that it's the practice of the board to allow public comment for each item as it appears before any action is taken. So I don't know that that's a specific policy, but it has been how the board operated in the past.
What I might suggest is moving that, maybe even give that option at the very beginning of the meeting, so that if, such as in May, when we had somebody attend the meeting, they would have the ability to file a complaint or open it up at the very beginning, and then also open it up at the end again as well, or like each action item, like you said, at each point, give them an option. So that might be an option too.
What are they? Are these, I mean, do they have to be related to the scope of the telecom board commissioner, or you can just come in and talk about anything you want to, ramble on for 20 minutes?
I think you could ramble on for 20 minutes about anything.
The reason that item is on the agenda now is that historically it has been an item towards the end of the agenda. And as Mr. Pennington said, also before any action is taken on any particular item, the floor was open for public comment. However, as the board might prefer to either keep that as an agenda item to where it could just be open to any issue that might be brought forward by the public, that would be the time to do that. or take it off the agenda completely and just have comments on action items.
At this time, I would turn the invisible gavel back over to our chairman, Mr. Shepherd.
Oh, did you start? Good for you. Thank you. All right, well.
We're discussing item 9 on the agenda.
You're almost done?
No, we're at point 4.
4 minutes late and you've got Steve, is this because you're here?
No, I'm just curious about this. I mean, I'm all in favor of opening up government, but I don't understand what the purpose of this is if it's not related to an agenda item.
To bring you up to speed, we're approving the agenda right now, and
Yeah.
Steve mentioned item number 9.
Yeah, I did not apparently notice that I had received a copy of one that, this one, I assume is the one that Mr.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the agenda item number 9.
Yeah, well,
which
what I'm
opening
saying
for
is,
comments.
that's not the way I kept it phrased. We've never had it phrased that way on the agenda before. So, anybody got an extra pen to share?
I think,
I lost
for
it.
instance, last month or in May, we had somebody come in and they had a complaint about Cox Communications and some issues they were having, and it was towards the end of the meeting when they had the opportunity to let us know, and so I might suggest that rather than
No,
I'm not sure.
that's fine, but seem, and wouldn't want to limit anybody's
Sure.
ability to do that. It seems to me if we received it ahead of time, either by email or phone, or
Sure.
they could contact any member of the committee or the staff or whoever, so that we could at least investigate it and have, put it on as a complaint and see if it can be satisfied.
Sure. And I think that when we get down to number 7, when we've got the report of complaints, there are some that have already been presented.
Right.
I think that's just kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's just to open it up to anyone that might have decided to attend from the public to say whatever they.
Okay, well, are there any time limits on how long someone can talk, or whether or not they have to be germane to the ordinance?
We've never maintained a time limit. There was never one set since I've been on the board, I think. You were on the board years ago for an extended period, so did you have one then?
We never had anyone,
Nobody ever?
no public comments.
No public comment? Okay.
None that I recall.
So what's your thought, how should it be? I mean, should,
I don't know. I mean, I'd like to have maximum public input, but I'd also like us to be able to operate in a professional and efficient manner as a committee. And if there are no rules, someone could come in and talk about anything they want to as long as they want to, and which means, I mean, we've all got other parts of our
Right.
life, and the city
Yes.
staff is
Sure.
being paid overtime.
What I might just suggest is, since we might not be able to necessarily narrow it down to something specific, like you mentioned, possibly having a time limit on it, I believe the city council during their meetings is limited at 5 minutes. Is that correct?
No, they don't have one.
There's not a limit. Okay, I thought at each meeting I'll make some comment to try to keep it short, but I'm not sure what that limit is, or if there's
Okay,
not.
well, that was just a point of information for me. I'm new, and
Sure.
it's on, and maybe if it becomes a problem, then we need to adopt some kind of
Burn that bridge, yeah.
policy.
For sure.
Burn that bridge when we get to it.
okay. Have you called roll?
Yes.
Okay, so
I think we're at
I would-
4.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we didn't include the gentleman, Mike Russell, who
He's resigned.
resigned. I see that, that's right. But he's still on our list, I think.
Okay, motion at the appropriate time.
Okay. Okay, then do I have a motion to approve? Was that already on the floor?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Mr. Geisler, please, for the television set report.
Television Center and the Government Channel report, I would like to take this opportunity to welcome the two new members of the Telecommunications Board, Michael Ehrig and Stephen Smith. Thank you, gentlemen, for contributing your time and expertise to the work of the board. I also have some certificates that I would like to distribute to the members of the board from the city that basically show the appreciation of the city to the service that you people provide. Mr. Smith and Mr. Ehrig. Thank you again for the time and the effort that you put into this. We know that it's volunteer and that it is something that is very valuable. Your expertise and your insight is very valuable in representing the citizens and telecommunications issues for the city.
And we thank the staff for preparing these and the mayor for providing them. And I think this is being done for all city committees. I hope so.
Yes, it is.
As they meet. And it's certainly something nice to have. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Included in your packet of information are second quarter performance numbers for the government channel programming. As we look at these numbers, I'll talk about the second quarter first, and then we'll look at I can look at the year-to-date numbers. What we do in terms of performance measurements are try to establish an idea of what our workload is going to be based on history and what we might anticipate going forward into the next year. In 2011, we budgeted, I said budgeted, but we anticipated our workload would be approximately 75 government meetings per quarter. That's average 25 a month. We actually, in the second quarter, covered and telecast 83 government meetings. It's a little down from 2010, but it's up from what we anticipated. In terms of public service programs produced and telecast, those are programs that could be anything from a public service announcement advising business owners in Fayetteville that the business license program is getting ready to start and they need to be aware of that, to a program regarding the reconstruction of Neocoska Creek. Those are basically, in that section, public service programs produced and telecast. You can say anything that's a non-meeting, anything that's not a meeting. And we anticipated that our workload on that would be about 25 for the quarter. We actually produced 46 programs in the quarter, and that's significantly higher than what we anticipated. And then internal training and communication programs, that is something that I anticipated in 2011 we would be more involved in. However, that hasn't come to pass so far. We haven't actually done any internal programs, and that would be a program that would only be used for the internal use of city staff. It'd be a training program or communication program that was not telecast or distributed to the public over any of our other means. And then the message board, that is the system that we use just to do still frame messages, kind of a bulletin board, electronic bulletin board. And that is significantly higher than what we anticipated. 250 over the quarter is what we anticipated. We actually have done 491. And I want to attribute that to the good work of the staff, who have found ways to make that whole production process more efficient, both in terms of getting the information that they need and also putting that information in a very digestible format in a one-screen or a two-screen slide that people can see. And we're doing a lot broader information in that as well, and that includes things like advising people that there's a burn ban active right now. Fayetteville Public Library programs are being promoted through the message board. Programs that are connected with other city activities, CDBG in the park, and all the agendas that we are given for City Council, Planning Commission. Those agendas are actually also telecast as slides in a special section of our telecast schedule. And those are also included in that number. DVD duplications as a workload, that is down from our anticipated volume, and the reason for that is that we've been more successful with our archive conversion process, where we're taking our archives that we have on VHS tape and converting them to DVD, and so that has slowed down significantly. The other thing that I attribute that decrease in numbers is we're not doing as many DVD duplications for the public of meetings and such, because they're much more aware that they can watch those meetings archived on our video on demand service, and that has helped reduce some cost. 2011 year to date, we're looking at pretty much on track as to what we anticipated. Over the first 2 quarters, we're 17 government meetings covered, a little bit higher than what we anticipated, but not much higher than what we anticipated for the first 2 quarters. We've done quite a few more public service programs, 50% increase. And then the message board is also higher, as indicated in the second quarter numbers, and we're down in DVD duplications as we are seeing that go forward. So that gives you kind of a snapshot of where we are in terms of the second quarter numbers based on what we anticipated our workload was going to be and what it's ended up being. Any questions on that?
I have one question now. It shows a 28% decrease over 2010 on public service programs produced and telecast.
For year to date?
Yeah, for the quarter.
Okay.
All right, I assume it's for the quarter. But I mean, that's only one a week, so I mean, it's not a great difference. Is there any reason why?
One of the reasons that we are doing fewer of those programs is that we're spending 2 reasons. One, we're spending more time on them, and the production values are being improved, so it takes longer to produce some of these programs. And the other is longer programs, fewer programs. We're spending, some of them are longer, but it's so that it takes more time to produce a longer program.
Well, compliment you on the improved quality of
Thank you.
productions.
I have to say that, again, that the staff of the government channel has really stepped up this year in terms of dedicating themselves to raising the bar. I gave them some pretty significant challenges for 2011, and they're really meeting those challenges, both in terms of production values and also keeping an eye on the city's resources to make sure that we are using them as efficiently as possible. In terms of overall operations of the television center, in the second quarter we backed off of expenditures quite a bit in terms of where the technology improvements are, and the reason for that is I wanted to give us a second quarter to kind of give an idea of where we might need to be by the end of the year. I didn't want to go forward with some projects that I would like to do until we find out, for example, one thing that I really need to find out and watch is where is public access going? We gave Your Media, the contractor for the public access television, quite some significant measures to hit in 2011 in terms of number of people, the number of classes they're conducting, number of candidate producers that they're required to have on the books. And one of the things that we were anticipating was that there could be a significant increase in the demand for the equipment. So we wanted to watch the second quarter and part of the third quarter to see if that demand was going to materialize and not spend money on something else when we might get to September and realize we don't have enough cameras for people to check out. We need to buy another one. So I'm reserving some of the funds. I'm holding back a little bit on capital purchases for the television center to keep an eye on that. And the other thing is that I wanted to make sure that where we were was going to be a solid foundation to build on. And do we have anything that's in getting ready to fail? In other words, is there something that we're going to have to replace on an emergency basis? Budgets being like they are, is there a lot of stuff we would like to have? Absolutely. There's a lot of things that would make our life easier, but there are also things that are critical for our mission. And if they're going to fail, I want to make sure that I'm not having to go to the city council and ask for emergency funds, but that we can anticipate those expenditures, take them from the monies that are already been budgeted. So some of the things that we're anticipating going forward to do, though, however, is improve some of the studio equipment. That's been an ongoing process, and we want to spend a little bit of money on that. And one of the major things that I'm anticipating doing in the third quarter is creating a redundancy for our telecasting system. Right now, the telecasting system is both channels are operated out of one box. It's a really good, solid piece of equipment for those who have followed this whole process over the last year and a half or so. Realized that we had some real significant issues in that, and the implementation of the electronic system has been great. It's very reliable. It's very solid. The only issue that we do have is that both channels are being managed out of that one piece of equipment. So we have no redundancy and we have no backup. And if that system goes down for whatever reason, both channels go off the air. And that's not something that I'm real comfortable with. So I'm going to be exploring and getting bids for an additional system that would be essentially identical to this one that we have now. That will give us redundancy, it will give us a little bit more flexibility, it will give us a little bit more functionality, but it will also give us a backup system. So if one channel goes off the air, we don't lose both. And we would have a disaster recovery plan so we can get the channel that failed back on as quickly as possible. And that's one of the things that I'm also working on this year from a management standpoint, is just that disaster recovery plans. What if this happens? What are we going to do? A lot of the activity at the television centers is, as you well know, revolves around the public access activity. And so the second quarter, I'll just leave you with this, the second quarter wasn't real active from the government channel side. We've done a few things in the television center, but not a lot. Just kind of maintaining for the second quarter to see where we are. So the real activity, especially the stuff that's really interesting for the public, is the public access. And I'm going to ask you if you have any further questions. If you don't, I'll turn it over to Ms. Shelley.
Anybody on the board have a question?
I'd just like to thank you for, as mentioned earlier, the quality has significantly improved, and that's obvious. And just to thank you and your staff for the work, because it's apparent that there are some significant changes, and don't lose that.
No, appreciate that. I'm anticipating to be able to report some even more improvement as the year goes forward.
And I'd also like to congratulate you on winning the state history awards from the old State House.
Historical moment, is that what we call it?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. The Old State House Museum had a competition, a digital shorts competition that we submitted a couple of our productions to Fayetteville History Minute.
Is the Old Main story, was that one of the ones that was significant in that?
We did, one of the ones that won an award was Old Main, the one we did on Old Main, and another one was Archibald Yell.
Gotcha. What's that?
And Richard Covey.
Richard Covey, we actually had three. Two won awards, and one was voted the fan favorite.
Oh, fantastic.
So that it wasn't really the fan favorite. Wasn't really an award that was issued, that was presented by the museum. There was people that were voted on that.
Very cool.
On that.
Okay, do we have any public comment, question? Mr. Gisler, otherwise we'll go forward.
I'll just say they're the three top winning statewide
That's
in
pretty
this
nice.
competition. It was the three top slots, and then a statewide competition.
It's fantastic.
We'll expect 4 next year.
Keep up the good work.
Okay, Ms. Shelley, please.
Well, greetings, everyone. I'm glad to see so many old faces and new faces, too. It's exciting to be here. What a difference 6 months makes. I'm very excited to have presented to you a 16-page report that summarizes the first half of the year of what I like to call the new Fayetteville Public Access Television operations. After compiling this report for you, I did the Reader's Digest abridged version that I sent actually last week. We sent a mid-year report to the City Council just to give them an idea of their return on investment for Fayetteville Public Access Television. And what I'll probably be doing is going over those highlights with you, and if you have any further questions on other things in the report, I'd be happy to answer those as well. Organizationally, your media, I sit here with a very strong board in place, a new and hopefully final stopping place for a while office at 34 East Center Street in the Woodruff Law Building, which will be officially opened at the end of this month. So we're excited about that. And we are really doing exciting things moving forward with our own work. But first and foremost, of course, is the city as our most important client. So I'm happy to report to you some of the highlights. If you look at the training highlights, especially I want to compare this to last year. I know the contract itself is very different, and as you said, there's some very formidable measurements that we are up against, and we have met all of those challenges and done it in a collaborative and productive effort that I feel gives the users of Fayetteville Public Access a much better experience when they walk in the door. So some of those highlights are, if you look at the number of class and workshop participants by ward, the first quarter we had 43, second quarter 41 total. So we had 84 class and workshop participants. Again, Ward 2 at 23, Ward 4 at 38, and Wards 1 and 3 virtually tied at 11 and 12 for the first half of the year. The exciting thing, though, is if you look at the number of trainings, well, there's lots of exciting things, but if you look at the number of trainings, last year at this time, Fayetteville Public Access Television users had an opportunity to attend approximately 27 trainings or class offerings. At the end of the first half of the year, there were 143 offered trainings to residents of Fayetteville, all of which would be free. If you look at the second quarter, we were able to even offer more. We added a test out session, which kind of brings me to the blessing and the curse of June especially, and the second quarter especially. The blessing being that we did some pretty amazing outreach to the Fayetteville High School students in video production, and from that got several new users coming into Fayetteville Public Access Television. That resulted in us creating a whole new offering, which is just a test out session, which took anywhere from about an hour to an hour and a half for folks who already knew how to do video production to come in, take the orientation, check the equipment that we have, make sure they knew how to use it, and test out on that program or that equipment. That resulted in 7 new candidate producers for the second quarter, which allowed us to meet our goal, or our quota actually, our contractual obligation of 15 for the second quarter. However, the sort of curse side of that is, had we not done that outreach and gotten those high school students in, and we would have fallen far short of our second quarter. I think you sort of mentioned that it's been, if not slow, definitely calmer for the second quarter of the year around the television center. And that's all new. Kind of as we go along this year, assessing everything that we're doing and the numbers that we are able to produce, and how that matches the contract, and whether we would need to look at those kinds of numbers moving forward. Maybe, you know, the second quarter in the contract, our quota increased by 5 over the first quarter. So we were supposed to do 10 in the first quarter. We had 11 candidate producers in the second, 15, and we were able to get 15, but perhaps we might want to make that more equal across the quarters in the next year as we see how the year unfolds. But still, very exciting that we were able to offer those types of trainings to Fayetteville. If you also look, we're kind of monitoring the no-shows and cancellations. That's remained pretty consistent for the first half of the year, 28 in the first quarter and 33 in the second quarter. When you juxtapose that with 43 total class participants in each quarter, 43 in the first and 43 in the second, that's a pretty high number. of no-shows and cancellations. And we still, as of yet, don't have a reason for that. But at this point, we're just kind of monitoring that to see if it continues to be a consistent issue that we're up against. Let's talk about certification highlights, especially if you think about this year versus last year. And this is where it gets a little bit complicated. Last year, the idea of candidate producer did not exist. It was certified producers that we measured only. And those were people who took the necessary classes and then actually submitted a show for telecast. This year, we're just talking about candidate producers in as far as what our necessary numbers are. And those are people who have taken the necessary classes that they can start checking out equipment. So if we look at those equivalent producers from last year who actually took those classes that would have made them the equivalent of a candidate producer last year, we were looking at only 14 candidate producers for all of 2010. And as of this time, this year, we have 26 candidate producers. And if you look at those 14 candidate producers, very few of them, only 9 took, I'm sorry, most of them, the majority of them, 9 took their classes in the previous year, 2009. And they just submitted their first program in 2010. So it's pretty amazing how far we've come in just a year. I'm sorry, and if you look at where we were, I'm sorry, at this point in this year, there would have been only 3 candidate producers at June in 2010 versus the 26 we have at this point. And when you look at certified producers, that's what we measured last year. Those are in essence, candidate producers who have submitted a show for telecast. Last year at this time, by mid-year, there were 8 new certified producers, only 2 of which took their classes last year. This year, so far, we have 9 new certified producers, and 8 of those have taken their classes this year. So all of our numbers really reflect people who are newly coming into Fayetteville Public Access Television and utilizing its services to create television. So pretty exciting. I agree with Fritz. We had sort of this concern as well. What's it going to mean to actually meet these numbers? Will we have enough cameras? Will we have people, breaking down the door? And so far, no. I think there's still that concern. I'm anxious to see what will happen once we do our outreach efforts in the water bill mailing, which will be happening soon, if we will get inundated with a lot of new folks wanting to use the facility. So far, we're able to meet these numbers and still not in a significant way, see if you think I'm correct, in a significant way impact the ability for users to use the equipment that we have. I mean, so far everyone's been able to access the equipment that they needed in order to meet these numbers. Any questions so far? Yes.
Do you have any idea of the people who are coming in, how they found out about it or where they got their information?
We got a good, in the beginning of the year, we did have a lot of folks who found out about us through, we had a kind of a 30-year anniversary sort of celebration and kickoff of our new name, and they found out about that through some of the press that happened for that. Gala event, we called it in January. I know that Lindsley and her staff did a great job in the beginning of the year too in informing city employees and making sure that there was a lot of good word about this. We have done the Block Street Party and the Farmers Market twice, and we know for sure that we've gotten 2 new candidate producers from those efforts. The other folks, a lot of times it's people that they've known that have come in. For instance, a few of the high school students brought friends with them that weren't even in the video production classes that have since taken the class. This would be a great opportunity for me to congratulate you, Mr. Smith, for graduating from the Accelerated Producer Training today and becoming our newest candidate producer along with Lindsley Smith. And I have the class schedule here with me for any of you who want to sign up before you leave tonight for one of the classes, so you too can become a candidate producer.
I'd like to say it was a very good experience and professional staff training and handouts, and certainly appreciate it.
And you've set the bar for your other members of the board here at 100 on your score. So let's see how you all can do. We would love to see you down there. I mean, it's exciting. We had actually this last month in June, our board chair took the same accelerated producer training so that the folks working with us have a better idea of what we do there and have the opportunity to make their own television. So, any other questions before I
On the no-shows and cancellations,
Yeah.
have you come up with any way to deal with it? I mean, you said that it's hard to find, hard
We
to
do
know
reminders. Yeah,
Mhm.
you know, it's interesting. We had two gentlemen show up last week. This is just a sign of my bad. Just kind of came in and showed up for orientation. And so I said, Flint, we need to do an orientation. It wasn't even an orientation scheduled that day, but I was so excited to see them. No wonder we were confused. But they took it. They were excited. They signed up for the class last week and then didn't show up, even with a reminder, email, or call.
Mhm.
So we really don't know. It's been various reasons. We had a workshop offering, which is in here by Richard Drake, that initially had 6 people signed up to do it. Now, we did get a couple of folks call for cancellations. Usually it's out-of-town trips. We've had a lot of trouble even getting workshop presenters during this particular time of the year because of the summer and the holidays. So I don't know if that's a part of it. Again, there's no clear, consistent reason why folks aren't showing up.
Do you have people getting certified but using their own equipment at this point? Or are these all people who will be using station equipment?
Well,
such as other cameras, and
Right.
home editing equipment? Or
We don't really call folks who use their own equipment and then make their productions and submit them for play on public access television are called outside producers, so there's no certification required for that.
Okay.
It's just like an import. Anybody can bring any, whether they've created it themselves or they have the right to rebroadcast it on behalf of someone else, can bring their show to be telecast. So we can look at those numbers in a little bit about as far as outside and inside producers, or I'm sorry, outside and local producers. Local producers are the folks who are certified to use that equipment. And so there has been a fair amount of outside producers, but that's frankly one of the places I see outside producers getting more of those people in. Certainly the challenge of more class participation is constant. And then getting more people to show up, as you do, Aubrey, on a very regular basis to do the short takes. If we can do more outreach to get those services utilized, I think that's definitely a place for us to grow. In addition to looking at the different wards and where we might want to do outreach based on usage per ward. Any other questions before we move on?
Have you seen any programming from any of the Fayetteville High School students that took the certification yet?
I have not. In fact, if my memory serves me, and again, Heather or Jar would know best, but one of the producers that has been using the facility the most, his name is Brady, just submitted his first program today. And he was commenting pretty loudly in the lobby about how excited he is, and this is going to be even more cool than any Abbey of the Lemur that's ever shown. So he was very proud of it, but to my understanding, that's the first actual piece that's come out of it.
Is there anything being tracked as to, out of the numbers that we're certifying, that are actually producing, that are active producers versus ones that have just been certified?
Yes, we do track program requesters is what we call them, and we track certified producers. So certified producers would be those candidate producers that actually submit a program for telecast. And let's look at that. So if you look at, let me find those numbers. Let's just start with the program type.
What page are you on?
Well, I'm looking at the City Council one. Let me look at the one that I submitted to all of you, and I will definitely find out. All right. If you look at, let's start with page 5, certification activity. So if you look at, we've had for the year to date 26 new candidate producers. Those are the people that have taken the classes and are able to submit programming, and only 9 certified producers. So we've had, for 26 people who get enough information to take the classes, 9 who actually have produced a program and it's been telecast so far. Now the production process can be very lengthy, and in fact Brady was certified, one of the first of the Fayetteville High School students to go through to test out, and he's just now submitting his program. Victor Parkinson, I think I mentioned him last month, has been the most prolific of the new candidate producers. I mean, he's, I think, on his 3rd show now. But that's, it's very different for each producer.
Sure.
But that's the comparison to, and if you look at new outside producers, which you were talking about on that same page, we've only had 2 for the year. So there's a huge place for growth in our services. I think it's an incredible service that we offer, that anybody could bring their wedding video and it would be telecast on television. But we just need to make more people aware of that, because that's certainly easy to do. And if you look at the number even of new trainees, that's a little bit different though. No, it's not different. New trainees versus the number of candidate producers will kind of show you how many people have actually gone through all the classes. Or maybe I'm actually wrong about that. I don't want to comment on that at this time until I look into it more. If you look at the new candidate producers by ward for the year, we have 6 in Ward 1, 4 in Ward 2, 5 in Ward 3, and 11 in Ward 4, which I think is interesting. Again, Ward 4 is definitely leading the way in that.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, please.
There might be a discrepancy between the number of new trainees versus the number of new candidate producers, because it could be an issue where somebody signed up for a class and didn't complete the class. Some of the classes have 2 sessions or 3 sessions, and as a new trainee, if they come into a class and sign up for a class, they would be counted as a new trainee.
Right.
And if they go through orientation, they would be counted as a new trainee. But it just because somebody goes through orientation, they also have to complete a couple of other classes before they can become a candidate producer. So that's why you might see a discrepancy in that number.
Which would include the 2 young gentlemen I spoke of earlier who came excited for the orientation and missed the follow-up class. And with regard to short takers, we really had a goal of trying to increase the number, and what we found is that we were really able to increase that number over the first quarter, from 61 in the second quarter versus 19 in the first quarter. That was done, however, because at every one of those 3 public events, we also did short takes. And at the farmers market, both times, I think we had like 14 each. So, and maybe we need to find more opportunities where we get out in the public and do it, but we're not really seeing on a day-to-day basis any increase in the number of Fayetteville residents coming to the studio to tape short takes. And I think we need to do some work to make that happen. With regard to equipment usage, we kind of see that, and I alluded to this earlier, not a huge increase from the first quarter to the second quarter, and actually some of the equipment usage was down, though the field camera checkouts were up, and my deduction from that, we'll see if it comes true, is that more people are checking out field equipment so that they can make their new shows, and we'll see an increase then next month in the editing bay usage, or next quarter, and hopefully more new programs. So there's a complaint we'll go over later. The last thing which I thought was interesting, and one of the things we want to track, is the number of new local programs was down significantly in this quarter. But if you will remember, in April, we implemented the new policy where anyone filming a studio show had to have a director of that show, so that, in essence, to make sure that their production was of the kind of quality that they would want to have seen on television, but most importantly, to protect the equipment and make sure that everyone could use it because it was being used correctly. When we looked at that, we were down some 40 hours in programming, but if we looked at Chris Harlow, he himself, who has not been able to find a director since that policy was put into place, was responsible for 31 of those hours of new programming not happening because he hasn't been able to produce any new programming on his 3 live shows that he had due to not having a director that would be willing to do it. So that policy implementation has had an impact on our new programming hours. That said, I don't think the policy in any way should be challenged or reversed, it is still our hope, and I know Heather, who is our operations manager, is working with Chris to still try to find a director for his show. But anyway, we're doing great. Overall, we're monitoring those places in which we see maybe a chance for improvement, and hopefully we'll beef up again, continue to beef up our outreach efforts. I think that's really the next phase of our whole year, is to continue to do that and find new and innovative ways to get more people to the station so that we can continue to meet these numbers. Any other questions?
When you
beginning of the year initially showed these numbers, and we talked about how significant the changes were, an increase, more certifications, more new people. It seems as though that you've really gone after that and still managed to hit it even during the summer months when things slowed down quite a bit, which I think is fantastic. And to see these increases, they're pretty substantial. So congratulations.
Well, thank you.
That's pretty significant. That's huge. I would also encourage you to stay after the Fayetteville High School students because they'll pay dividends. There'll be more programs in the future, and I know you mentioned maybe reevaluating the number of certifications in the summer months, but I would encourage you to really stay after the high school students. It's a great thing for the summertime as well as future programs as well. But this is fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, on that note about the high school students, are the ones you've had contact with so far taking any training there at the school?
Oh yeah, actually one of our board members, Peggy James, is the teacher for all the video production classes at Fayetteville High School. And she worked with us we spent an entire day, every hour of that day and for classes, we did a presentation on Fayetteville Public Access Television. And so that's how, at that time, we then signed up students to come in to the television center. And we had a pretty good return on the number of folks who signed up, who actually showed up and were tested out. So, and again, a couple of them brought friends of theirs who hadn't even been through the classes. And I think that's another place we could do a lot more outreach. Where else besides Fayetteville High School are there people who already know video production that might want to come down and test out and be able to check out the equipment because they already know how to use it or would easily learn after just a little bit of training. So,
have you done much outreach with the U of A in the past?
We have not so far, no.
I mean, I know several people from the journalism department who have their own shows on UATV,
right? But
love to hear themselves talk, and I'm sure would enjoy another outlet.
Right. Well, that's a great. I mean, several of our board members are graduates of the School of Journalism, and I think we need to put them to work doing that outreach.
I mean, you've got Professor Sherrills, right?
Well, she's actually an advisor to the board.
Oh, okay.
Dennis Kirkpatrick, who teaches, is on our board, and we're actually trying to get a couple more. Bruce Castleberry, board chair, who graduated from the School of Journalism, as did our board members Maribel Albaran and Berto Gutierrez. So we do have folks who have connections there, and we need to. I think part of our thinking was probably they already have UATV, but we shouldn't rest on that. Let's get them down to the television center. Yeah.
Give them 2 outlets.
Exactly.
Even more experience.
For more voices to be heard.
Another note, unless somebody has another question specifically to her at this moment, I did talk with the person who oversees that activity, the high school or public school television, and Miss Susan Norton said that she would, of course, they haven't been able to attend since they've taken over because they have a school board meeting, so the top officials attend those, department heads and such. That conflicts with this meeting. Anyway, she did say that she would try to recruit students to actually attend some of our meetings, and I didn't talk about your board meetings, but to report and get that interaction going so they understand and they get another opportunity to share what they actually do with their television station. So we'll be hearing more from them, understand as fall approaches. Any other question?
I would like to make a comment, if I can, please, regarding, this is kind of a follow-up to Ms. Shelley's comment about changing the policy regarding live studio productions and requiring a director. That was done from us primarily from the viewpoint of being able to, as she said, protect the equipment from not malicious abuse, but from misuse, so that we can maintain the operations of it, but also to help assist in training and teaching people the ways to produce programming that is going to result in what they want. And in addition to that, we also implemented last month actually documented the technical requirements for programming to be submitted to either the public access channel or the government channel. And this is a document that I worked on with my staff that codifies basically the everything from the resolution of the video to making sure that the audio is within proper parameters, and it's all technical information and the technical parameters, but there's very important that we have those in place and have something that we can refer to for our producers, so we don't have to reject programming. If they have it on the front end, then they can follow that, and it's also going to it establishes a baseline for everybody to be able to say, oh, we have to at a minimum meet this. It's not content in any way content focused. It's about what does this content meet the technical issues and technical requirements. But we put that in place. Great help from the public access staff in doing that, and I think it's made a good contribution to helping our producers as well.
Anybody else? Okay, reports on complaints.
I received a complaint from Mr. Gary Ricks back in the first week of May. He called the television center to talk to me. He is a Cox Communications subscriber. I gave you a synopsis of the situation and the investigation that I conducted regarding his complaint. It had to do with billing issues and his contention that Cox was not crediting him appropriately and was billing him for things that he did not buy. I contacted Kelly Zaga, who's the Director of Public Affairs at Cox Communications, regarding the complaint. She helped investigate it on their end. It essentially ended up being a situation where I could not be involved anymore because it was a personal financial situation between Mr. Ricks and Cox Communications. They could not share any of his billing information with me. I contacted Mr. Ricks and told him that that I could not do that. I mean, I couldn't speak about specific amounts involved with his billing with them. It's personal information on his side. It's business, their business information. That they were not at liberty to discuss that with me. I gave him the opportunity to share that with me if he so desired. He did not follow up with that. Where I finally came to the point of with his complaint was that I communicated to him that I felt like Cox was making a good faith effort to resolve the issues that he had. He, for the most part, agreed with me. I did tell him that I would present his complaint to the board. I also sent him a letter, which is also included in here, advising him that he had the option of appearing before the Telecommunications Board to present his complaint to you for action, and that you had the opportunity to come to the meeting. And since June 7th, I've had no further contact with Mr. Ricks.
I have a question. You suggest he present his complaint as part of the action?
I said he had the option to come speak to the board, and that the board would be able to listen to his complaint.
I realize that Cox is franchisee and AT&T are franchisees, but does the board have any authority under the ordinance to negotiate billing disputes? Everybody doesn't like their phone bill or their cable bill?
No, not to negotiate billing disputes, but the board does have the authority to hear the complaints and facilitate resolution. By the ordinance, it says that the board is tasked with facilitating resolution of disputes. And how that might be interpreted.
Billing disputes? Billing disputes?
The ordinance doesn't designate whether billing disputes or not. It's how that might be interpreted. I'm not.
I noticed that in the letter it says you'll be notified regarding the outcome of their consideration of your complaint. In reading through this, I'm not certain what consideration we would give this complaint, being that it's so vague. I mean, it just says that the numbers that he has, he believes are erroneous, and he states in here too that if they start with the wrong number, they're going to end up with the wrong number. But we can't. I mean, I'm not certain as to, unless he does present that issue, even what really opinion we can give on any part of that.
Short of that, the telecommunications board doesn't have any. It's not within the purview of the board.
Right. I think, unfortunately, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know there's a whole lot that we can do.
It seems to me that in our sort of obligation to advise the city council, and is not to act as a personal representative of people that dealing disputes with their private business. I mean, does anyone?
No,
I'm new.
I agree with that.
I do not believe
It doesn't seem like an appropriate use of the staff time.
I think Mr. Geisler handled it properly in saying that, I'll do the best that I can, because I know the liaison for Cox, but I think beyond that, I think that we've probably exhausted beyond, maybe take it, if it's necessary, take it to city council as to what would necessarily be done, but
Haven't seen it. That's the kind of thing. It's number 9. You just open it up. People come in, express their dissatisfaction with their building, or whatever else.
Well, if I may, gentlemen, I would say that if this is the only forum where people can share those things publicly.
Oh, a small claims court.
Well, yeah, but the fact is that I believe this is a proper forum for them to come in and describe it and detail it if they choose to do so. I don't think most people want to do that on television, maybe, but should they? I mean, we might all have a story about our building problems right now.
however, without us being an action board.
Send them to short text.
We should do an insert in the
Yeah, I
Cox
mean,
mailer.
if they just want to
Cox mailer, send them to short
public
text.
complaint.
Yeah, that's possible.
I myself have had billing complaints with Cox Communications. The only thing I could request that they would have more people that man their complaint telephone. So far as I know, there are only 2, or I don't know how large an area. But when I was able to talk to them, they acted speedily and fixed it over a period of 3 months. But there were many times when I simply couldn't get through. And I would like to see them have more people address the complaints. I'm sure there would be more complaints if they had more people to address the complaints.
Well, there's the rub.
Demand.
They have a way.
I think our communication director might have something to add.
Yes.
Thank you for recognizing me. Leslie Smith, Communication Director.
You've had complaints too.
City of Fayetteville. I do, and in fact, that's a role that I have, one being in the mayor's office and the administration role, but also being as the Communication Director. You should know, and there's probably, how do I put this? I'll preface this by saying, Fritz and I do a lot of, and I think, and now Ann, we pull, at times we pull her in and say, how can we make this better? Why do we do this? Why was this done in the past? We do a lot of those what ifs. We try to anticipate all the factual scenarios so that we have fairness, equality, etc. Now, I will say, when I took this job, it was interesting. Susan, Thomas was in the communication director role before me. And on Cox billing statements, and whether it was part of the franchise or not, but when I took this job, it was, okay, the communication director of the city of Fayetteville's name will be on Cox bills. And it states on there, if you have a complaint, please contact. And so when I came into the role, Okay, change your name and put my name on it. So I think you should know that that was there. We've been doing enough analyses, in the last year to go, how can we be legal? Let's get on track on all these things, but we do have these things that come out of the woodwork. It's an excellent question. But my name is on the Cox bills that if they have a complaint, they call me with the city. Then of course I do call Kelly Zaga. Now what happens is I do get a lot of calls. Sometimes they're about billing. We don't handle that. And I work with Cox and send them straight there. A part of it being in the role in the mayor's office and being a city staff member is help the person resolve whatever their problem is as fast as possible. And that's what I look at. I think that's what we all have been looking at. I know that the board looks at this. Granted, as communication director, I have looked at the ordinance and I'm not seeing where it's in your purview. I myself have not sent anyone to the telecommunication board, but we try to resolve it best as possible. These are questions, I think, if the board had, a decision, if you can't make, if this isn't part of your purview, we as staff could at that point do what Fritz did and said, send them to Cox, which I often do, but not add in, you can also appeal it to the telecommunication board. If there are certain things that you want to analyze, and I know you're asking questions, what does this ordinance mean, and it might need to be refined, etc. But if there are things you say, it's not in our purview, have it resolved, but it doesn't need to come to us. We can work with that.
While I realize the board does not mind listening to complaints necessarily, I don't feel that it's necessarily right for us to tell the citizens that they can come present it to the board if we can't ultimately do anything to take action and change it. While I've got no problem having Mr. Ricks come in and explain his situation, I don't want to waste his time by having him come in and explain this to us when at the end of the day there's ultimately nothing that we have the ability to do other than send him to Cox.
Yeah. And in fact, I don't know if you want to engage as a governmental entity into the private business affairs of a private corporation. And I will say most of the calls I get are about the bundling aspect, where most people say, I want this one channel, but I have to pay for the 10 that nobody in the world would ever watch. Why do I have to do that? And I hear that, a lot.
And I think this is a very pertinent discussion, not to leap ahead to a committee report, but I think it's a very pertinent discussion at this point in time that I would really hope that the board will consider as we go forward looking at the complaint procedure. This is something that the board has been discussing for several months now, and absent a formal procedure as to how things should have been handled, I tried to take care of Mr. Ricks in as responsive a manner as possible, that he felt like he was being listened to and such, but and also giving the opportunity for everyone to be able to weigh in as they needed to. But as I said, this whole complaint response issue, I think, has been very much in the forefront for the last several months, and this just goes to illustrate even more so that hopefully we can get something resolved from that perspective pretty quickly, as Mr. Pennington is working so hard on to get done. And I think this is great. I mean, this could make a significant change in how we might want to approach the complaint procedure and communication with citizens that are wanting to file complaints about different things.
I agree. Should we go ahead and
Get
move
an
on to
FAQ on that. Get an FAQ on that.
Yeah. So, but that's again, just to reiterate, I haven't had no further contact from Mr. Ricks regarding any of this.
Well, if we were operating under the proposed policy that we might be discussing later on in this meeting, I would say that we don't have enough to go on, and because he has failed to pursue it any further than his last contact with you in early June, that it's not a valid complaint and that we shouldn't take any action.
But we commend you for being a nice fellow.
Yeah.
Would the board like me to communicate with Mr. Ricks regarding that? Or just?
I don't know that we need to necessarily communicate it unless he is back in contact with you.
Okay.
And then maybe, unless you feel differently.
I have a comment. They have a perfectly adequate way of doing it. He just has to call them, and the phone number's on his billing statement. He may have some trouble getting through, but once he gets through, they'll take care of it.
Okay.
Well, your last letter to him said that you would notify him regarding the outcome of our consideration of the complaint.
Which
So-
we haven't been able to do since it was, and I can communicate with him.
Yeah, it might be best if you just shoot him an email or another letter. And,
I mean, unfortunately, the
that say that
information's just so vague, we can't.
we can't take any action.
Right.
I move we table it.
Okay, related to that, let me see, I had several thoughts during this long discussion. Some of these people are caught, there are legitimate things that they want to discuss, so I wouldn't try, I don't think I would ever move to just eliminate the possibility of just telling them to come in and share it with the public. And as long as we make that fair to all companies that are providers, that their customers come, so that we don't appear to be getting business for one or the other of those providers, then it's equal opportunity sharing of complaints.
But if we have no authority to take any action, we're wasting their time and
But
ours.
I don't
we
think
have authority to hear the complaints.
And I think that it's
That's
not that we don't want to
fair.
hear the complaints, but it's rather just, for instance, in Fritz's letter, just being more aware of how we, not necessarily recommending that they come in and speak to us with them, with that complaint, with them believing that we're going to take some sort of action. While I've got no issue listening to anybody's complaint, I just would not like someone to come in believing that we're going to be able to wave a magic wand and fix it, because ultimately we don't have the ability to do that. And
Certainly, I agree with you, but I think we shouldn't give that impression that we're going to take some draconian action to follow up on it, but simply that we allow them to share that, and that might spur efficiency in any provider who is aware that these complaints won't just be maybe recorded on their telephone system, and they can go back over the months and see your complaints before and automatically tell you. I'm speaking from experience right now. Well, yes, we see it was a year ago that you first brought this up and it hasn't been corrected. It's not from Cox, it's from something else. But there are problems like that if they're talked about in public, maybe it's something we should provide, because the public can be very frustrated and not know where to go, as your callers tell you. Well, thank you for that discussion. Do we have from Ms. Shelley the specifics, or we heard?
Oh, no, I have specifics.
Okay.
On the David A. Young complaint that was then followed up, I believe, in this particular month by Catherine Schurls, and I will call on Mr. Giesler to help me with this issue. There was a complaint at orientation, as those of you who have taken the classes, Mr. Smith, know. We hand out the policies for the television center and for Fayetteville public access users. And in that policy, it mentioned that no animal would be allowed in the control room of the studio or the editing bays, even service animals. The idea being that it would protect the equipment, and that it, as Mr. Giesler, as my understanding, had the understanding that it was fully vetted by the city administration that would be okay. That there were certain circumstances in which even service animals could not be allowed. So I reported back to Mr. Young that that was the policy and that it had been vetted with the city administration. Ms. Sherrills then came back and said she really did want to challenge that further, that it was a violation of ADA. So I, again, turned it over to Mr. Giesler. And I want to say, once again, that the new policy that we adopted through the contract for dealing with complaints works beautifully from what may seem like the most trivial to important issues like, are we in compliance with ADA, which is a pretty important issue. And working with Fritz on these complaints has been very smooth this year. And so I'll turn over the outcome to him from that point, which was...
As she said, the gist of the complaint was that we were not in ADA compliance. We looked at the policy again, which is essentially was put in place to protect our significant investment in equipment, and also to make a facility that was open, very open to everybody, while still allowing animals to be used in studio productions in the facility, and setting guidelines for that. And was told by the city attorney and the people that we went back and re-examined the policy and rewrote it, so there are still the capability, there are still areas where even service animals will not be allowed, but those areas are to exclude a service animal. That area has to be for staff only. So if there's any area that is open to the public, or any area, the question was asked, well, is the control room open to the public? Can anybody just waltz in there as they want? And the answer to that is no, but that is one of the places where we provide services to the public. So if you're signed up for a class, you're going to go in there, or an edit room. So those areas now are open to service animals for someone who is participating in class or production as might be necessary. And so we did. We revised our policy and republished it, and I believe Mr. Young is very satisfied with
and
that.
the policies have been amended in what we give to everyone who comes to orientation. So, again, just an example of how a complaint results in positive action, and was well done and well resolved. So,
how does this affect the possibility of a person who uses a service animal who applies for a job inside that building? You said it's things that are staff only. So is there consideration that somehow someone who applied for a job, they're qualified in various ways, and they do use a service animal, would that impair their ability to do their work or limit hiring of them because
no, we have a different
there are areas that are off limits?
It'd be a different set of
areas.
employment law would apply to that separately.
They'd have to
So
make
that would never be an issue.
They'd have to make reasonable accommodations.
Right.
I believe the law reads that service animals have to be allowed anywhere the general public is allowed. And so that's the reason for making those areas staff.
Thank you.
And I do want to note that, it was vetted before by the city attorneys. I don't want you to assume or think that that we were ever in violation of the ADA. And in fact, the way it was written the first time is, I'm an attorney, I've done ADA law, and that's essentially what we have found too. But what we did was a broader interpretation, because technically, if you look at public spaces, it's not into the invitation like an attorney's office. The public space would be the lobby. Do you consider the public space once you go back into the office and everything, even though a person from the public can go in there? So technically, yes, no. So there wasn't. But what we did was we got together and we decided, this is good. We've never had a service animal in there. This is a theoretical complaint. It's not based on anything that actually comes up, so which makes it, for an attorney, very hard to do an analysis without any facts in order to apply to the law. But I thought we did a really good job in working with the city attorney's office and others by saying, okay, let's take this one, let's throw it out, let's extend it, and actually give it props way up in addition to what the ADA doesn't allow.
Well, on the same subject, what's the time limit now? What's the provision for the person? One person has, for a long time, 2-3 years, brought in a dog as a prop or participant. actual performer on his short takes. Is there a time limit he can have it there before and after doing the short take?
What the policy states is that animals are welcome to be part of productions in the studio. It's encouraged that they be brought in and out through the back door, which is really close to the studio door, and that they be in the facility 5 minutes before to 5 minutes after the production, and that they're essentially limited to the studio.
Okay.
That gives them time to be, for example, let's say they were doing a short take. The person has to prepare, be there, ready to go into the studio to record their short take. The person there previously, that gives them 5 minutes to come in, be there in the back room, ready to go. And then at the end of the program, it gives them an opportunity to, collect any props or anything else or items that they had in the studio with them, and get all that together, and then leave. So.
To understand correctly, this is a theoretical situation. This was not actually a problem. I mean, I realize it could be a potential problem, but it wasn't theoretical. Yes.
The ADA issue was theoretical. Yes. But I do want to say that I'm glad that Mr. Young did bring it up, because it gives us an opportunity to re-examine that policy and make adjustments that I thought, that we thought were very appropriate.
It looks like it was handled appropriately.
And the last one's programming content question.
Yes. Referenced in full detail on page 7 of my report. Let me lift up the part of Mr. Parkinson's complaint that I thought was very informative to all who use Fayetteville Public Access Television. His note, if you want people to watch your programs, this should not be allowed, the behavior being, in this instance, belching during a show that was telecast. And then he said, I know your program is not censored, but there are limits of acceptable behavior in public. He was very serious about this complaint, and not only sent me this email came to me after speaking in person to 2 of my staff members. And he is if you'll note, I mentioned his name earlier as the most prolific new candidate, now certified producer, so he is at the Television Center quite a bit. What came of this, in addition to my fully investigating the complaint and the show about which he complained, was a very good outcome, and that was, in essence, dealing with his complaint seriously, because it was an important complaint to him. I think I'm making an assumption, but based on his reaction, he felt respected in that. And showing him that the true purpose of Fayetteville Public Access is, and we have a purpose statement that's listed on page 9, that in essence, we are not about how many people watch the shows. We're about training people and providing the venue for which anyone can telecast their own show, that we control content in no way whatsoever. And he seemed very happy with the outcome. He's continuing to show up, produce his shows. And what we did as a follow-up based on this complaint that I think was good is not only is it in what we hand out at orientation, but we've now posted the purpose statement of Fayetteville Public Access Television, both in the classroom and on the board in the hallway where we have all other information about public access television. I think it's important for people to know what our purpose is. It's really to train and to provide the venue for people to use this on a first-come, first-served, non-discriminatory basis. So there was a positive outcome. The complainor was very happy with the results, and I'm open to any questions should anyone have any.
So does this, was his assumption that this was intentional gastric distress the person was displaying?
That it was disrespectful and perhaps intentional and maybe even a joke. My assessment was that it was none of those. It was just an unfortunate situation that he was personally dealing with. However, that doesn't matter to me. In essence, because of my job and what we do at Fayetteville Public Television, it would matter not a single bit whether he was trying to burp and thought it was a huge joke or whether it was just happening naturally and he couldn't help it. It's his show, it's his content. We are just there to televise it, telecast it.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Is there a time delay on this between the time he does it and the time it hits the air?
That's a good question. Initially, this show was telecast live, as all of Mr. Harlow's shows are. He is one of our few producers that has had a live telecast. This, however, was a repeat because he is the person we spoke about earlier who has been unable to find a director. So this was a repeat of a past live show.
My concern is, what's to prevent profanity?
There's nothing to prevent profanity in the program request form that anyone fills out when they ask for a program to be telecast on public access television. They have to check whether there is mature content. And if there is mature content, it is telecast between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m. But in essence, as long as they're not violating obscenity law, copyright law, someone's right to privacy, or they're not promoting a product or asking for any kind of money, we will telecast it. That's the only content, content that we can control, or the list that I just gave you.
Ultimately, those violations fall on the producer, though, correct? I mean,
Yes.
if they violate those, they're the one that is held responsible, correct?
Correct. And in fact, the program request form asks, they have to check that they are not violating any of those. And we do ask that they check if there's mature content. If we determine after a telecast that there is, we will ask them to telecast it between noon and 6 a.m. And if there's a continued violation of any of those policies, of course, we would deal with that as a policy violation, not as something regarding the particular content.
Good.
Any other questions for her? No?
All right.
Committee reports. Well, I'll ask first, is there anything from the Internet Committee?
No, we talked about that last meeting. We were gonna go, I don't know, hold off
Can we
until the new members.
Yeah, can we
I'm
come
sorry.
back to that one? After we had a complaint committee too as well, didn't we?
Right.
Would you be opposed to starting there?
No, I thought this was gonna be shorter.
Oh.
That's why I was offering it first. Did you have anything else?
No, no.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Mr.
It's only going to be slightly shorter. I met with Fritz and Lindsley. Unfortunately, Mr. Davis was held up by his job in Little Rock. We spoke briefly about the policy that Fritz had drafted for our review, which he emailed out to all the members of the board. If you want to have a discussion of it tonight, we can. I was hoping to just have everybody review it, set a meeting of the complaint policy subcommittee for next month, and then add an agenda item for consideration of the policy in the August meeting of the Telecom Board. So, and we would also welcome any additional members to the complaint policy subcommittee if you would like to attend.
Just a question, more information on this. If we have suggestions or questions, is it appropriate to email those to you, or is that getting into?
We once got, we had the assistant city attorney here, and he suggested that we utilize, just to be safe, we utilize on anything related to business of the committee, that we go with a list that includes the station manager, so he could be sure it gets to everyone. And, but I've always maintained that we should communicate with everybody when we communicate on this business,
Steve,
including the staff and so forth.
have you received an email yet with like the agenda and information? I've just used that same list to reply all to. So basically, as long as we're including everyone.
Yeah, but it is appropriate to.
As long as it's including everyone, is my understanding, but yes.
But that doesn't mean you guys can't communicate on your own personal acquaintance or something. I mean, it doesn't
Well, it's
limit your
business,
life.
making sure the business is there.
Right.
And it would be appropriate to get feedback on the policy from the public the
Right.
same way. I mean, if they know that I'm the chair of the complaint policy subcommittee and we're discussing this, and they've seen it and want to email me with some suggestions or complaints or requests, I think it would be appropriate that way, as long as no decision is made.
Right.
So we can't vote via email.
No.
Otherwise, we might not be here every month.
I think it's a good idea for the subcommittee to meet in August. And
How is August 9th?
What day of the month?
It's Tuesday.
What day of the week, sir? Tuesday. And that would be the council agenda day, not a council.
I was just
meeting.
thinking at noon.
Noon again.
It's about the only time I have free.
you don't have August 1st available, do you?
August 1st. I don't. I'll be in Fort Smith for Social Security hearings.
Say I'm majority of August. Second week of school.
August 2nd?
It's pretty full. What did you suggest? I'm sorry, August what?
2nd, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th.
Ninth would not be.
That works for me. 9th or 11th.
Can we go ahead and get that to the city clerk then?
Which day?
The 9th?
Works for me.
You say noon?
9th, noon. Maybe in room 111, depending on availability.
I'll check. I'll get it set up just like I did the last time. That's kind of the standard procedure. This far out, we shouldn't have a problem getting a room.
Okay.
One or the other, this one or that one. And I'll make sure that it gets booked, gets on the public calendar, and send out a notification.
Okay. I'd ask that any suggestions or statements be emailed to us or sent to Fritz or Lindsley, and we can consider them if you can't be at the subcommittee meeting that day.
Perfect. Okay.
I thought that might take a long time. Okay, but everybody did receive the copy of the agenda, that's the main thing. And I heard from Mr. Venus that he received it, Fritz, thank you. Well, this is the time the floor is open for comments. Let me point out that what we've said in the past in this position is a longer statement, and it's that anyone from the public may comment at that time. We don't mention a time limit, but just as the city council does, there's always the potential to ask a person to please keep it short if it's going too long, at the discretion of the chair and the board suggesting it to the chair. But anyway, it generally says that after each item on the agenda, the public will be allowed to speak or invited to speak, and that's up to the chairman to remember it or somebody to remind him before he jumps the gun to the next item, I think. And that at this point in the meeting, someone who didn't comment on any item would be allowed to make a comment if he hadn't done it earlier, or bring up something else that we could include on our agenda if we chose for the future. But that's the way to get the suggestion from the public on something they think we should be talking about. It doesn't mean we'll follow their suggestion. But that doesn't always take a lot of time, but I think it's nice to have it there to allow. I think what the quorum court allows only a post into the meeting you can comment. Well, they voted on things, and that drives me crazy. I mean, I'm going to wait, sit there and see what their decision they're making and not get to have any public input. But afterward, I can say, I didn't like it. I don't know. I've never commented at the quorum court, but I'm just saying if I were one of the people. And I've watched many of them on TV and attended a few.
I think part of the reason for wanting to limit public comment is to make sure the meetings move smoothly and quickly, and
Right.
I think that it's also our responsibility to each other as well to make sure that once we start the meeting that we're focused and diligent and move through the agenda quickly, so that we make them easy to watch and not hours and hours long, and
Right.
trying to make it smooth. So
And
I think that's part of the reason we're doing that
and
too.
more entertaining for the public than if it's too long.
Mhm.
But we do have to take into consideration that, for me, this committee board should be trying to set the example for following the Freedom of Information Act to the extreme, not to the very minimum requirements of the law, and that we should show respect to the public and say we're appointed by the city council, and like all the other things that are appointed by the city council, we're supposed to somehow experience what they're going to experience before it gets to them. And planning commission experiences a lot of stuff before it gets to the council, but in our case, it doesn't happen very often. But
Our very own speaker's corner.
yeah. So anything else? Announcements? My announcement is to remind you that we have election of new chairman and vice chairman in August, the annual election. So that will be coming up next month. And I put that note on the agenda I made, but I'm adding it right here. And other announcements from
I have an agenda
members?
suggestion.
Yes, sir. Suggestion. Thank you.
Well, I participated in a sort of an orientation session for new board members, and one of the things we discussed were public access television policies. And there were two things on there that I think need some clarification. One of them is that it says calls to action cannot be included in programs. And
Like vote?
like write your congressman, like vote, like join the wing Sierra Club or whatever. And I think calls to action are what public television can do most effectively. So, and I don't think that's the intent of that. I mean, I discussed that with staff. It's one thing to say, come in and buy my hamburger, but it's not, which would be commercial, but I think the way it's written needs to be clarified. The other thing is, it says public television access reserves the right to refuse to telecast any message board request. Again, I don't think the literal reading of that's what's intended. If message boards ought to be subject to the same guidelines as other programming, it seems to me, and that Fayetteville Public Television shouldn't have unbridled discretion to veto some messages or others. Unless that's the case. If that's the case, then I'd like to argue that it be amended, but I think, so I'd like to have discussion of those 2 points on the agenda next time.
Very good. Anything else from anybody?
And if either of you have comments or suggestions on those next time, I'd be delighted to hear.
All right.
Move that we adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Wait, there's no second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you, folks.